And feel free to ask questions during the webinar. I will address those at the end. One thing to note, though, I am planning on responding to each question and sending it to all attendees. If any attendee has an issue with that, please say so in your question, and I will reply privately. Okay, so let's. Oh, and then one other issue. As a handout, I've included a PDF of these slides. In our thank you note to all attendees, and registrants, we will include the slides. But for those who want to follow along, feel free to do so. So your Chemwatch team, I'm Tom Hassey, Business Development Manager here in the States, located physically in Michigan. My colleague, Paul Benbow, also Business Development Manager here in the States. By the way, we cover business development for North America for Chemwatch. He's physically located in North Carolina. Nora Ballant is our Customer Service Manager for North America. She's physically located in Tennessee. And Augusta Brinley, or as we like to call her, Gusty, she's our Technical Product Specialist. And she's for North America, sorry, and she's physically located in Florida. So we are here stateside and certainly can work within the time zones of North America to service both our customers and prospects. Today's webinar, WHMIS 2015, how the adoption or migration affects your labels and SDS. So what we'll cover today is what is WHMIS 2015 and how its alignment with GHS is creating difficulties for exporters to both US and Canada, but quite frankly, any trading partner with Canada, that this has created issues. So the topics will be, what is WHMIS 2015? What is the implementation timeline of WHMIS 2015, and how does that affect your company? How is WHMIS aligned with GHS and HazCom 2012? Quite frankly, the same thing, but specifically to OSHA HazCom 2012 will be some of the topics we'll highlight in terms of contrasting the WHMIS hazard regulations to the GHS regulations, but specifically those covered under HazCom 2012. How does WHMIS 2015 affect hazard classes, the symbols, GHS elements, and your SDS and labels? So what are the differences between 2015 and OSHA-based HazCom 2012? How does all of this affect my company, and how can we at Chemwatch help you out? Sorry, folks. I just wanted to make sure that we're recording this properly. Chemwatch at a glance. It's now over 27 years. We started in '89. We now have over 5,000 customers, and we provide wide range of, or actually a one-stop chemical management solution and a set of services around that to the global chemical safety marketplace. So we're headquartered in Australia, where we started. Offices, 21 countries. We actually have 4 now in the States since Augusta just moved to Florida. Our ecosystem of customers covers the entire chemical user value chain. That is global chemical manufacturers, users, and suppliers use our solution, and that includes over 5,000 of these customers. And we also like to state that 7 of our customers are in the top 20 Fortune 500. Our customer markets offer a wide range of applications: oil and gas, auto, electronics, mining, aerospace, government offices, as you see there, the EPA, NASA, DOJ, research institutes like the National Renewable Energy Lab, the National Center of Atmospheric Research, hospitals, and a wide range of universities, at least 30 to 40 universities here stateside. So why use us? We're unique. We provide both expertise in content management along with chemical scientist expertise in-house, along with a cloud-based software application. So our solutions cover over 90 countries and 47 languages, and that's a standard offering out of the box. We maintain and own the world's largest and most comprehensive regulatory database library, currently over 4,800 from regulatory databases or lists from 89 countries. Our SDS database, we currently have over 30 million vendor SDS, fully searchable and indexable, on about 10 to 20 data points, commonly searchable on. And we manage all SDS updates for our customer, and we do that free of charge as part of the license fee. We also, that are author, what we call our gold SDS. These are directly linked to the vendor SDS on the same substance. As an example, we have gold SDS for all 150,000 plus pures, in addition to many common products like Rust-Oleum and WD-40. And these are linked with the vendor data. So we use vendor equivalent data. We author it with our scientists. And the focus is not on selling that chemical or product. It's on worker safety and hazards communication. Our regulatory content, we link this in real time to the SDS ingredients data. So the two databases require no integration, no user help, so to speak. We link these directly, and as you pull up new documents, all regulatory behavior per the most recent updates are included in the SDS document, specifically, for instance, sections 11, 8, 15. So the history of WHMIS. Well, in 2015, Canada started alignment of their workplace hazards materials information system with GHS. This was started, let's say, by amended Canadian federal regulation in 2015. And what was introduced is a new regulation class. What was introduced were hazard product regulations, or HPR. This replaced what was current, the controlled product regulations, what was called CPR. Actually, that is WHMIS 1988. So HPR and WHMIS is equivalent to WHMIS 2015, and CPR is equivalent to WHMIS 1988. And you'll see the terms used as we move forward here. So there's phases to moving to HPR compliance, or from WHMIS 1988 to WHMIS 2015. And the transition phases cover three categories: manufacturers and importers, distributors, and employers. So what you see is up to this coming May, next month, the end of the month, manufacturers and distributors, or what is commonly categorized as suppliers, you can use either category, either CPR or HPR, to stay compliant with both WHMIS 1988 or WHMIS 2015. But starting this June, manufacturers and importers, you must be compliant with WHMIS 2015. Distributors, you can still do either or, but employers, now you must comply with either or. Starting next June, distributors, you must be compliant to WHMIS 2015. And then at the end, or December 1st of 2018, employers, you must be WHMIS 2015 compliant. And just sort of another way of showing it around the actual regulations or acronyms is basically, as I just stated, that manufacturers and distributors, you can go either or. Employers, you need to consult with a regulator as to what to do. Starting June 1st, manufacturers and importers, you must comply with HPR requirements. Starting next June 2018, distributors, you must comply with HPR compliance. And up to June 1st, 18, employers, you still can be compliant with either CPR or HPR. But starting December 1st, employers, you must follow the lead of the manufacturers and importers and the distributors, and that is you must now be compliant with HPR requirements. So the transitioning from CPR to HPR. Well, we go from WHMIS hazard classifications to standardized GHS classifications under WHMIS 2015. The safety data sheets that were 9 sections under WHMIS 1988 are now 16 sections, so they harmonize or align with GHS in that respect. WHMIS 1988 requirement on the hazard labeling was it must have a hatched border. Well, under WHMIS 2015, you can see you're moving to a GHS label. That's rather significant. No hatched border. WHMIS 1988 said there's a 3-year revision requirement for SDS. Another significant change under WHMIS 2015 is the vendors are required to update the SDS only when there is significant new data available. We'll talk about that more here in a few minutes. What was an independent hazard communication system under WHMIS 1988, basically independent to Canada, under WHMIS 2015, it is now aligned with GHS, specifically the 5th revision, along with OSHA's HazCom 2012. So you can see the note below, during the transition period of the classification, the label of material SDS must comply fully with either CPR or HPR, as chosen by the supplier, and not be a combination of the two. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So the changes in hazard classes. We'll talk about physical hazards first. As you can see, there's a lot of carryover from CPR, except that in red. These have been added. Most importantly, physical hazards not otherwise classified, that's unique to WHMIS 2015. That is not a hazard class included in GHS. So again, not 100% alignment, but we'll take what we can get, right? The reason I bring that up, you take what you can get, is, and we'll talk about this at the end, is we must all know, yes, the effort to align 100% certainly is, in the spirit of things, the intent. But these are two separate legislative bodies, the United States and Canada, and they are beholden to different groups. They must respond to what's in their best interests of their countries. So to expect 100% alignment, well, I think that's an expectation. Certainly, maybe that's a goal, but as you can see, there is a difference. There's a couple differences, I should say. We'll look at another one in a minute. And that is the health hazard classes under HPR. You can see there's a lot of carryover from CPR. And also, by the way, and I'll go back to the previous slide, in white, those are also in GHS. Okay. So again, the white, CPR and GHS, but what's in red was not included. Sorry, that's an addition. Biohazard infectious materials. That's included now under HPR, but it is part of GHS. But also what's new to HPR for health hazard is what's called health hazards not otherwise classified. And again, as physical hazards, this hazard class is not included GHS. This is unique to WHMIS 2015. The categories under HPR, a little different, let's say, nomenclature. So each class will contain one or more categories, number 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, etc. Sorry. And the types. The hazard classes have categories called types, which are assigned of the alphabetical letter. And in some cases, there'll be a subcategory assignment, like, for instance, 1A. And you can see, so the hazard classes will look, for instance, it might be something like a 2A1 or along those lines. So the regulations, the HPR, the hazard products regulations, they specify the criteria for each hazard class, which enables, of course, suppliers to classify their products. If any product meets any of the criteria for a hazard class, it is known as a hazardous product. So the hazard groups under HPR, well, compared to GHS, We talked a little bit about this earlier. They both have the same and two major hazard groups: physical hazards, health hazards. And then we talked a little bit earlier about under these hazard classes, there is a specific hazard class that is different between WHMIS and GHS. We'll talk about that in a second. But also, GHS has a third hazard group, environmental hazards, which is not included or adopted by WHMIS 2015. But what WHMIS 2015 states is that users can include the environmental hazard information in their SDSs and labels. So these additional hazard classes, we talked about them earlier under physical and health hazards, that these are not specified or included by GHS. Hazards not otherwise classified. This is adopted from HazCom 2012, but it's for WHMIS 2015, but they separate it into health and physical classes. There's also a biohazard infectious material. Again, this has been adopted, carried over from WHMIS 1988. And you can see, for instance, under dusts and asphyxiants and gases, these are adopted from HazCom 2012, but HPR provides its own definition and criteria for these. So there are some differences. Well, by the way, the explosives and environmental hazard categories, which we talked about, that are in GHS but not WHMIS, well, that's because these are not currently included in WHMIS regulations. Explosives, as an example, are covered by other legislation in Canada. So the SDS content and format. What's changed is the SDS format content for WHMIS 2015 is now aligned with GHS. Which product will need an SDS? Every product that's classified as a hazard product under WHMIS that's intended for use, handling, or storage in a workplace in Canada must have an SDS. Also, what's changed, we talked about this earlier, rather significant, is the SDS must be updated within 90 days of the supplier being aware of any significant new data that affects a product hazard classification. Affects product hazard classification. The supplier must inform its purchasers in writing about any new significant data and change of its SDS and labels. The update will be indicated in a new revision number and revision date, usually put in either Section 16 or the header of the SDS document. So the 16 sections under SDS for HPR, 12 through 15 are voluntary. These sections, however, must be included in the SDS, but providing appropriate content is not mandatory. Section 16, the header and corresponding number must be included in the SDS. As we talked about earlier about to reflect any vendor change. If any of the required information is not available or not applicable, it must be clearly stated. For mixtures, the SDS must include every ingredient. That is the chemical name, a concentration range that's classified as hazardous to health and presented in the mixture above the specified concentration level for the relevant health hazard class. The initial supplier must be identified in Section 1. There are exemptions. That is, if the hazardous product is sold by a distributor, then the distributor's details, name, address, phone number, can be used in Section 1. The other exception is if the hazardous product is imported by a supplier to use in their own workplace in Canada. The details of the foreign supplier can remain in Section 1. Single, bilingual SDS or two separate unilingual SDS are allowed. Now, this is important because this is different. This is a different requirement on the SDS side on language support as it will be for the label. We'll look at that in the section. So you can see these are the 16 section headers under WHMIS 2015 for the SDS in blue, dark blue, sorry. Labeling requirements. The supplier labels. This is provided by the supplier and attached to the hazardous product. Workplace labels only required when the product is made or used at the workplace, if the product is decanted from its original container into another container, or if the supplier label is damaged or lost. A workplace label is not required if a decanted hazardous product is used immediately or if it is used by the same worker during one shift. So each hazard category is assigned with a signal word, a pictogram, hazard statement, and a selection of precautionary statements. Very, very similar to GHS. So the labeling requirements. I'll just jump to the bottom. Labels must be bilingual. That's different than the SDS. Remember, that was more. You could go either or. Now on the label, must be bilingual. So there's 7 really requirements. Product identified, that is the chemical name, product name. The initial supplier identifier, so the name, address, phone number of the Canadian manufacturer or importer. The following exemptions carry over from the SDS, and that is if the hazardous product is sold by a distributor, then the distributor details can be used in Section 1. Again, another exception, just like with the SDS, if the hazardous product is imported by the supplier to use in their own workplace in Canada, then details of the foreign supplier can remain in Section 1. Pictograms, GHS hazard symbols. So you can see there's an example of the alignment. Signal word, warning or danger, will be indicating the severity of the hazard. Hazard statements. There would be standardized phrases assigned to each category. Precautionary statements, standardized phrase assigned to each hazard category. And then supplemental information. Again, labels must be bilingual. So summary of the changes. WHMIS 2015 repeals the 3-year revision requirement for SDS. Sections 12 and 15 are now optional. There are exceptions, but it can be omitted. Please read carefully the exceptions. That's up to you, quite frankly, to be compliant, not for them to tell you exactly what you need to put in there. Bilingual SDS and labels are now required. But it's a little different in terms of its form. In other words, you can have 2 separate unilingual SDS. You can have a bilingual SDS, but the label must be bilingual. Label layout has changed. Now requires grouping together the signal word, the hazard pictograms, hazard statements on GHS labels. It's a key part of the alignment. Hazard and physical hazards not otherwise classified do now require labeling. It has to be on your label, right? Because that'll be under hazard statements. Repeals the hatched border requirement, and repeals the statement the material safety data sheet is available. So in summation, in 2015, Canada federal legislation in Canada repeals CPR. And, by the way, the ingredients disclosure list, and replaces it with hazard products regulations. So now CPR is now HPR, as we talked about quite a bit. So WHMIS 2015 also closely aligns with HazCom 2012, that's 5th revision under GHS, and we can see that certainly in the labeling requirements. WHMIS 2015 includes combustible dust, single asphyxiant, and pyrophoric gas classification criteria. Adoption of hazards under WHMIS 2015 that are not otherwise classified. The physical hazards not otherwise classified, and health hazards not otherwise classified. Substances previously classified as dangerous reactive materials under CPR are now classified under HPR within the acute toxicity hazard class. Business impact. Well, the harmonization of WHMIS 15 with GHS, quite frankly, is represented as the harmonization of the Canadian workplace hazards chemical classification system with virtually all of its trading partners. And that certainly includes the U.S., and this will facilitate trade. Maintaining the previous regulatory approach would mean that Canada's workplace hazard chemicals classification would be misaligned with all the partners. And that misalignment is reflected in cost. It's approximately $20 million a year, just an estimate from the Canadian government. And this is effects on Canadian government and industry, and it's mostly from getting rid of all these administrative costs. But something to keep in mind on business impact is both WHMIS 2015 and HazCom 2012, which GHS is aligned with, are governed by 2 separate legislative bodies, Health Canada and US-OSHA. And these bodies will, quite frankly, act in the best interests of its people. And that's not always aligns. How can we help? Well, as you can see, there's a lot of change. There's a transitionary period of what's occurring. So quite frankly, you suppliers and you employers, you need to stay up with this. Well, what we do is, quite frankly, we stay up with it. So in other words, we have a global team of experts. We have about 170 now, globally located in about 21 countries. We have chemical scientists, hygienists, toxicologists, regulatory specialists that monitor these changes. For instance, TSCA, changes within WHMIS, within REACH. And we update our database accordingly. We also manage, basically we host and manage your data on your behalf. So in a sense, we offload the IT costs of hosting and managing chemical data. And that's done because we're a cloud-based solution, but most importantly, the data physically is located in a server under the Amazon Web Services. Very secure, and then we put user tools on top of that and security so you can get at it. The platform, we host and manage it, and it's fully scalable, as I just described. It's a cloud-based application. You can add users, add products, add sites, very simply and easily. And our solution helps save money. It helps, quite frankly, achieve compliance effectively. When you look at our SDS as an example, it pulls data, the latest updated data available on that document. And that would include any changes in WHMIS. It also includes currently any changes in GHS. So it allows you to outsource these 1, 2, or 3 of these challenges, the expertise, data, or platform part. And it helps your business grow. We call it future-proof, but it helps it grow. It's a scalable solution. As you add SDS and sites and other capabilities, the solution grows along with you. And the SaaS model basically looks like this. We call it systemic chemical management, so that we bring that expertise, data, and platform into what's called a software as a service. So our WHMIS module, we call it, that our authoring tool and other chemical management tools access, sits on top of this unified chemical management model, with our SaaS model. So it allows inventory management, risk assessment, labeling, reporting, and integration. My apologies. Regulatory information, substance data, and SDS services, these actions are seamless and interactive because the data, quite frankly, or these tools sit on top of our data pool and are interconnected, as I mentioned, and allow you to move through these different chemical management requirements seamlessly and easily. And again, I mentioned our global team of experts that update that data. There's over 170 of them. I mentioned the chemists, toxicologists, hygienists, regulatory specialists. And this data is updated daily by our scientists. And it's a global reach. We support all local and global requirements for 93 countries currently, as you can see here, and in 47 what we call country-specific languages. And that is, for instance, in Canada, you can see it's up the top row, 4th column from the right. We support both English and Canadian French. And again, it's a flexible and seamless solution. The applications are plug and play, as I mentioned. It's a unified application. It sits on top of Microsoft .NET platform, so everything works seamlessly, but that's a very stable platform, been around in the industrial environment since the mid-'80s. Cloud-based, SaaS-based application, minimal IT requirement on your end. And our framework supports a lot of application integration, including what we call Web Service API, which allows our data to be pulled into, quite frankly, any ERP system or what's called a relational database. But any ERP system, for instance, like SAP, allows it to integrate and pull the data directly into that platform. So that's the end of the presentation. I would like to look at some questions quickly. Let's see what we have here. Can the labels be trilingual? Absolutely. In fact, and we can show this in a product demo online at any future date of your needs. And quite frankly, at trade shows, this is what I typically show with anyone working under NAFTA is I can create a label within a minute, a label template that allows you to create specific text boxes or other pictograms within, quite frankly, 47 languages. So yes, those three, absolutely. Does the bilingual requirement depend on the user's country secondary language? Not at all. I mentioned the 47 country-specific languages. That can be any of your secondary languages. The software will support the integration of the regulatory data into both the SDS and label for 93 countries and 47 languages. Now, some of these I'm not going to answer only because I want to talk to my colleagues first, and then I'll send these out to everyone. If I'm a U.S. chemical manufacturer and I sell a product to a Canadian customer, regardless of what they do with it, will info in Section 1 of the SDS, do I have to put in as chemical manufacturer sending the chemical to a customer in Canada? Let me talk to our regulatory person on that. I just want to make sure I answer it correctly, Abby, but I will. And if you're okay with me blasting that answer out to everybody, I will. Do we need two separate SDS in each language, or are we to receive one SDS with both languages on it? I think I did address that under the change under SDS, but let me give you a more comprehensive answer here in a second. Or in the future, I'm sorry. And there's another question on the validity of THSI, which I do not know, and I will get back to the audience on that answer. Abby, you have another question on labeling? It's a very long one. I would like to answer that in many parts, and again, I will send these answers out to everybody. To IBC containers, Michael, I'm not really sure. I do, as we mentioned earlier, that label must be bilingual. Let me check on that. How's the cloud platform protected and secure from hacking? We can show you, I mentioned earlier about the Amazon Web Services. Obviously, the data sits in a server in their web farm. They provide security around that. I have what we call our service level agreement I can send you that talks about the security requirements around our cloud platform. If you want to add a new chemical to our database, just send us the SDS. That's the easiest. Or we have on our subscription user interface, on our user interface of our subscribers, there's a setting you can click on that says SDS send or request, and then you can attach a PDF there, fill out a few pieces of information, send it to us, and we'll insert it, and we can usually get them in there within 24 hours. But if we get special requests, I actually had one inserted in three hours. Okay, I don't see any other questions. I really appreciate everyone's time. If you do have any questions, my name is Tom Hassey. Send them to me. You see my email address there. Feel free to send them to me, and I'll combine them with the other questions, and I will send everybody what I call a Q&A document on the questions with our answers. Okay. Let me take a look at the chat in case anybody was trying to talk to me. I do apologize. Nope, looks good. Thank you. And just in case there's another question. Nope, looks like I got them all. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your time. Oh, and I didn't talk about the next webinars. I apologize. We're still setting it up. We just talked about a topic this week. I'd rather not share until we nail it down. But it has to do with control banding and workplace assessment. And what we'll do is we'll send a email notice out to everybody here, certainly as an attendee, but also all registrants of this webinar. We'll send everyone a notice with the topic. Well, thank you again for your time, and I hope everyone has a great day. And again, thank you for joining us. Goodbye.